Have you ever walked into a room and felt your mood change before a single thought formed? Before memory, before logic, just a feeling. Now imagine that subtle influence shaping your brain every single day after the age of 70. By the time we reach our 70s, the brain is not fading, it is adapting. It is reorganizing, conserving energy, refining what matters. But here is what many people do not realize. The environment around you becomes more powerful than ever. The walls you live within, the light that touches your eyes, the sounds that surround you, these are not passive details. They are biological signals. They are instructions. After 70, the brain becomes more sensitive to context. Vision changes. Hearing changes. Sleep cycles shift. The nervous system recalibrates. And because of this, your home environment becomes either a quiet ally or a silent stressor. This speech is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. Individual health conditions vary, and any significant lifestyle changes should be discussed with a qualified healthcare professional. Because after 70, the question is no longer just how long we live, but how gently, how clearly, and how consciously we allow our surroundings to shape the mind that carries us forward. Let me share 5 key insights every senior should understand. First, light is not just illumination, it is chemistry. Light is not simply something that allows us to see. It is a biological command delivered through the eyes to the deepest structures of the brain. When morning light touches the retina, specialized cells send signals to a small region called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the master clock that coordinates nearly every rhythm in the body. This clock regulates when we feel awake, when we feel sleepy, when hormones rise, and when they fall. After the age of 70, this system becomes more delicate. The lens of the eye thickens and yellows slightly, allowing less blue-spectrum light to reach those receptors. The pupils narrow. The signal that once arrived strong and clear now arrives softer, sometimes distorted. And the brain, receiving a weaker message, may struggle to maintain a stable rhythm. This is why dim environments can have an unexpectedly heavy effect on mood and clarity. Without sufficient light, melatonin, the hormone of night, may linger into the morning, creating grogginess and low motivation. Cortisol, which naturally rises at dawn to energize the body, may not peak as effectively. The result is not dramatic at first. It feels like a subtle fog, a slower start, a sense that the day is harder to enter. But over weeks and months, this misalignment between light exposure and internal rhythm can influence sleep quality, emotional balance, and even cognitive sharpness. Bright, natural daylight acts almost like a tuning fork for the aging brain. When exposure occurs early in the day, especially within the first hour of waking, it strengthens circadian alignment. The brain receives a clear signal. It is morning, it is safe to be alert, metabolism can activate. This clarity ripples outward. Appetite regulates more predictably. Body temperature follows a healthier curve. Evening sleep becomes deeper because the brain now understands when night truly begins. There is also an emotional dimension to light. Sunlight increases serotonin activity, a neurotransmitter deeply connected to mood stability and feelings of well-being. In later life, when social networks may shrink and mobility may decrease, environmental light becomes an even more essential contributor to emotional resilience. A well-lit room can subtly elevate engagement and reduce the inward pull of isolation. Artificial lighting plays a role too, but quality matters. Harsh glare can strain aging eyes, while overly warm, dim lighting throughout the day may fail to provide the alerting signal the brain requires. Balanced illumination, bright during the day, softer and warmer in the evening, respects the natural biological rhythm. It tells the nervous system when to activate and when to unwind. Even small adjustments can create meaningful shifts, opening curtains fully each morning, positioning a favorite chair near a window, spending time outdoors when possible, ensuring hallways and reading areas are adequately lit to reduce strain and prevent falls. These are not decorative choices. They are neurological interventions disguised as daily habits. In later years, the brain becomes more dependent on environmental cues because internal signaling grows less robust. Light in this sense becomes a gentle guide. It steadies the clock, clarifies thought, and protects emotional equilibrium. When we understand that illumination is a biological necessity rather than a background feature, we begin to treat it with intention, allowing the aging mind to remain synchronized with the simple, powerful rhythm of day and night. Second, clutter is cognitive load. Clutter is rarely just physical, it is neurological. Every object within your field of vision sends information to the brain. Shape, color, position, familiarity, all of it must be processed, sorted, and either stored or dismissed. In youth, the brain performs this filtering with remarkable efficiency. Networks in the prefrontal cortex quickly decide what deserves attention and what can fade into the background. But after 70, those filtering systems require more energy. Processing speed slows slightly, working memory becomes more selective, and the brain prioritizes emotional meaning over rapid sorting. This makes visual complexity more taxing than many people realize. When a room contains stacks of papers, crowded shelves, tangled cords, or too many competing patterns, the brain does not see stuff. It sees unfinished decisions. Each item becomes a silent question. Is this important? Should I remember this? Does this require action? Even if these questions never reach conscious awareness, they generate low-level cognitive demand. Over time, that demand contributes to mental fatigue. It is not dramatic exhaustion, but a steady drain, a subtle shortening of patience, a quicker slide into overwhelm, a sense that concentration slips more easily. There is also a stress component. The human nervous system evolved to scan environments for safety and predictability. Order signals stability. Chaos signals uncertainty. In later life, when balance, reaction time, and physical resilience change, the brain becomes more vigilant about surroundings. Visual clutter can unconsciously elevate stress hormones because it suggests unpredictability. The body tightens slightly. Attention becomes scattered. The mind feels less settled. This does not mean a home must feel empty or impersonal. In fact, meaningful objects are deeply important after 70. Photographs, books, heirlooms, these anchor identity and memory. The key distinction is between intentional presence and accumulated excess. When items are chosen, displayed with care, and given space to breathe, they support clarity. When they pile up without structure, they compete for mental bandwidth. Scientific studies on attention show that even minor background distractions reduce working memory performance. For older adults, whose cognitive resources are naturally more focused and selective, minimizing unnecessary stimuli preserves energy for what truly matters: conversation, reflection, creativity, problem solving. Simplifying a room can actually improve decision-making because fewer visual interruptions compete with thought. There is a physical safety dimension as well. Clear pathways reduce fall risk, which in turn lowers subconscious anxiety about movement. When the body feels secure navigating a space, the mind relaxes. Confidence in movement supports independence, and independence reinforces psychological well-being. Decluttering, therefore, is not about perfection. It is about kindness to the aging brain. It is about reducing the number of small, silent demands placed on attention each day. A clear table invites focus. An organized drawer reduces friction. An uncluttered bedside area supports calm before sleep. In later years, energy becomes a precious currency. The brain spends it carefully. By simplifying the environment, we reduce unnecessary withdrawals. We create a space where attention can rest, where thought can deepen, and where the mind is not constantly negotiating with its surroundings but instead allowed to move gently and deliberately within them. Third, sound shapes the nervous system. Sound is never neutral to the brain. Even when we believe we are ignoring it, the auditory system continues to scan, decode, and interpret vibrations in the air. Unlike vision, which we can soften by closing our eyes, hearing remains open in every waking moment and even during sleep. After the age of 70, this constant openness takes on new meaning. The inner ear becomes less sensitive to certain frequencies, especially higher tones. At the same time, the brain's ability to distinguish meaningful speech from background noise often declines. This creates a paradox. The world may seem quieter in some ways, yet more mentally exhausting in others. When background noise fills a room, a television running without full attention, traffic humming beyond the walls, appliances cycling on and off, the brain works harder to separate signal from noise. Neural circuits in the auditory cortex attempt to sharpen speech, filter distractions, and maintain comprehension. This extra effort consumes cognitive resources. Many older adults describe feeling tired after social gatherings or busy environments, not because conversation lacks joy, but because the brain has labored continuously to decode sound. There is also a deeper biological response at play. Sudden or unpredictable noise activates the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center. Even mild, irregular sounds can trigger microsurges of stress hormones. In youth, the nervous system recovers quickly from these small alerts. With age, recovery may take longer. The body can remain in a low-grade state of vigilance, heart rate slightly elevated, muscles subtly tense. Over time, this persistent alertness influences sleep quality, blood pressure, and mood stability. Sleep, in particular, becomes more vulnerable to sound as we grow older. Deep sleep stages naturally decrease with age, making rest lighter and more easily interrupted. Environmental noise that once passed unnoticed may now fragment sleep cycles. Each small disturbance limits the brain's ability to consolidate memory and repair neural connections. Morning fatigue can follow, not always recognized as the echo of nighttime sound. Yet sound is not only a stressor, it can also be profoundly restorative. The nervous system responds differently to predictable, gentle auditory patterns. Soft instrumental music, rhythmic nature sounds like rain or ocean waves, even the steady hum of a fan can create a sense of continuity. Predictability signals safety. When the brain anticipates a sound and finds it consistent, vigilance decreases. Parasympathetic activity, the branch of the nervous system responsible for rest and recovery, becomes more dominant. Breathing slows. Muscles soften. Thought becomes less scattered. Intentional quiet holds its own power. In silence, the brain shifts toward internal processing. Networks associated with reflection and memory integration become more active. For older adults, who often possess rich reservoirs of life experience, silence offers space for integration rather than stimulation. It allows emotion to settle and insight to surface. Designing a sound environment after 70 means choosing what enters the ears rather than accepting constant background noise. Lowering unnecessary television volume, turning off devices when not in use, improving insulation against traffic, or using hearing support devices when appropriate can reduce strain. These small adjustments conserve mental energy. They transform the home from a field of subtle alarms into a sanctuary of chosen sound, where the nervous system no longer braces unconsciously but instead rests within a rhythm it trusts. Fourth, air quality influences thought clarity. Air is invisible, and because it is invisible, we often forget that it is the most constant substance we interact with. Every few seconds, oxygen enters the lungs, passes into the bloodstream, and travels upward to the brain. The brain, though small in size compared to the rest of the body, consumes a disproportionate amount of oxygen to sustain its electrical activity. Each thought, each memory retrieval, each emotional regulation process depends on a steady supply. After the age of 70, the efficiency of this system can shift. Lung elasticity may decrease slightly, circulation may slow, and the brain becomes more sensitive to subtle changes in oxygen availability. What once felt like a barely noticeable difference in air quality can now influence clarity, alertness, and mood. Indoor air often contains more than we realize. Microscopic particles from dust, cooking fumes, cleaning products, building materials, and outdoor pollution accumulate in enclosed spaces. Carbon dioxide levels can rise in poorly ventilated rooms, especially when windows remain closed for long periods. Even moderate increases in carbon dioxide have been shown to affect concentration and decision-making. The effect is not dramatic or immediately alarming. It feels like heaviness, like mental dullness, like a need to sit down and rest more often than expected. The aging brain is particularly attentive to internal balance. It thrives when oxygen and carbon dioxide levels remain stable. When ventilation is limited, the body may subtly increase breathing rate to compensate. This change can go unnoticed, yet it places mild strain on the cardiovascular system. Over time, persistent exposure to stale or polluted air may contribute to headaches, fatigue, and a vague sense of mental cloudiness that is difficult to attribute to any single cause. There is also an inflammatory dimension. Fine particulate matter, even at low levels, can trigger systemic inflammation when inhaled regularly. Inflammation affects blood vessels, including those supplying the brain. Healthy blood flow is essential for maintaining cognitive sharpness. In later life, when vascular resilience is already adapting to decades of use, minimizing inflammatory exposure becomes especially meaningful. Clean air is not a luxury, it is protective. Simple environmental changes can yield measurable differences. Opening windows for even short periods allows fresh air exchange that reduces accumulated carbon dioxide and indoor pollutants. Using high-quality air filters in heating and cooling systems decreases circulating particles. Maintaining humidity within a comfortable range prevents air from becoming overly dry, which can irritate respiratory passages and impair comfort. Adding indoor plants, while not a complete solution to air purification, can contribute modestly to a sense of freshness and connection to natural systems. Beyond physiology, there is a psychological effect to breathing clean air. Deep, unstrained breathing signals safety to the nervous system. When air feels heavy or stale, breathing often becomes shallow. Shallow breathing reinforces mild stress patterns. In contrast, fresh air encourages fuller inhalation, which activates calming neural pathways through the vagus nerve. The result is subtle but real: clearer thought, steadier emotion, improved stamina. In the later decades of life, resilience is preserved through attention to fundamentals. Air, though unseen, is foundational. It shapes circulation, inflammation, sleep quality, and mental acuity. By treating indoor air as an active component of health rather than a background condition, we reduce unnecessary strain on the aging brain and support the quiet, ongoing work it performs with every breath. Fifth, emotional memory lives in physical space. There is a quiet conversation that takes place between memory and space. Long before we consciously reflect, the brain is mapping rooms, textures, colors, and familiar objects against emotional experience. After the age of 70, this relationship becomes even more pronounced. While short-term recall may require more effort, emotional memory, the memory of how something feels, often remains deeply intact. The hippocampus, responsible for forming new memories, may slow slightly with age, but networks linked to emotional meaning continue to function with remarkable strength. This means that the home is not just a structure of walls and furniture. It is a landscape of identity. A familiar chair is not simply a place to sit. It holds the imprint of mornings with coffee, conversations with loved ones, quiet evenings of reflection. A photograph on the wall does more than display a face. It activates neural pathways associated with belonging, continuity, and shared history. When these cues are present, the brain receives reassurance. It recognizes itself within the environment. This recognition stabilizes mood and reduces anxiety because predictability and familiarity signal safety to the nervous system. As we grow older, the sense of continuity becomes biologically important. The brain seeks coherence, a narrative that connects past and present. Objects that carry personal meaning help maintain that narrative. They reinforce the understanding that life has depth, that experiences accumulate rather than disappear. In moments when memory feels uncertain, physical reminders can anchor identity. Touching a well-worn table or seeing a cherished book can bring back not only images, but emotions that re-establish inner steadiness. However, there is a delicate balance. Emotional memory is powerful, and not all memories are soothing. Surrounding oneself exclusively with reminders of loss or unresolved grief can quietly intensify loneliness. The brain does not separate visual input from emotional tone. If an environment becomes saturated with symbols of absence, the nervous system may remain in a state of subtle mourning. This is why intentional curation matters. It is not about erasing the past, but about selecting which aspects of the past are given daily presence. The textures within a home also carry emotional weight. Soft fabrics, warm lighting, natural materials. These tactile and visual cues influence how the body feels. Sensory comfort reduces cortisol levels and encourages parasympathetic activity, the branch of the nervous system responsible for restoration. In later years, when physical sensitivity may increase, these small details amplify their effect. A supportive mattress, a favorite blanket, the gentle familiarity of a well-known scent, each contributes to emotional regulation in ways that are rarely acknowledged yet deeply felt. There is also empowerment in shaping one's surroundings. Choosing what remains and what is released affirms agency. Agency supports mental health because it reinforces the sense that life is still responsive to intention. The act of arranging a room, displaying meaningful art, or creating a corner for reflection is not trivial. It is a declaration that identity continues to evolve. After 70, the home becomes more than shelter. It becomes an external memory system, an emotional regulator, a mirror of selfhood. When curated with awareness and compassion, it strengthens psychological resilience and gently supports the mind in holding both history and presence at the same time. If this reflection stirred something within you, don't let it remain just an idea. Today, choose one small change in your home. Open the curtains wider, clear one surface, soften one sound, refresh the air, or place one meaningful object where you can truly see it. Notice how your mind responds. Pay attention to your energy, your breathing, your mood. Your environment is speaking to your brain every moment. Make sure it is saying something kind. And if you found value in this message, share it with a parent, a grandparent, a friend, or anyone stepping into their 70s and beyond. These simple shifts can protect clarity, dignity, and emotional strength in ways that medicine alone cannot. Begin gently. Begin intentionally. Your mind is still listening.